All right, so let's jump right into it. Today we're going to do a deep dive on Ford Motor Company.
Yeah, you're right on the heels of that Q4 2024 earnings call.
Fresh off the press, right? We've got the transcript. It's February 6th, 2025, the day after that call.
Straight from the mouths of CEO Jim Farley and their brand new CFO, Sherry House.
A lot to unpack here, and they pulled in record revenue last year, Ford did.
Yeah.
You'd think they'd be sitting pretty, but looking at this transcript, it seems like maybe there's more to the story than meets the eye initially. What's your take on this?
Well, it's interesting because on one hand, I think Ford's really playing to their strengths. You know,
Mm-hmm.
they're leaning into what they do well. Their trucks are just absolutely crushing it.
Okay.
The F-Series, still America's best-selling vehicle again for another year.
A dynasty.
Yeah, and it's not just the F-Series either.
Mm.
The Ranger just snagged North America Truck of the Year for the 5th time in a row.
Wow.
Talk about a dynasty, right?
Yeah, you don't see that very often.
5P.
It's not all about gas guzzlers, though, right? I mean, they're making moves with the hybrids, too.
Right, and it's not just like a small little bump. Their hybrid truck sales are up 18% last year alone.
Hmm.
It seems like people want that, that power of a truck, but they want to feel a little less guilty when they're at the pump.
Makes sense. So they're holding on to those loyal truck buyers, but they're also dipping their toes into the more fuel-efficient options.
Wow.
Which is a smart move, but they're not just about selling trucks, are they?
No, they're not.
What about this push? I keep hearing about this move towards, ongoing services and software and things like that.
I think it's a sign that Ford is thinking beyond just the point of sale.
Yeah.
They're trying to build an ecosystem almost,
Okay.
like a whole suite of services that really goes beyond just the vehicle itself.
Right.
Take Ford Pro, for example, their commercial vehicle arm.
Mm.
Their software subscriptions were up 27% last year. Yeah.
Through the roof. And it's not just like the basic stuff. Either a quarter of their new telematics customers are adding on dash cams, fleet management tools.
So they're creating this whole world around the Ford experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's really becoming more than just a car in your driveway.
Interesting.
And it's a really smart business move too, because, instead of just relying on those one-time sales, when you sell the vehicle,
Right.
they're creating recurring revenue streams. That's going to make their business much more resilient.
It's all about that recurring revenue these days, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Makes a lot of sense. Well, speaking of resilience, let's talk about their focus on cost cutting. It seems like Jim Farley's pretty serious about, trimming the fat there.
Yeah, I think it represents a real cultural shift.
Okay.
He's holding their engineering teams and the leadership accountable for making, quantifiable improvements.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just talk. They're actually seeing results.
Yeah.
They saved $500 million in the second half of 2024 alone. That's a pretty nice chunk of change.
Yeah, it is.
But they're not stopping there, are they?
$500 million is just the start. I mean, they're talking about, multi-billion-dollar cost-cutting opportunities ahead.
Wow.
It's a big task, but, in this industry, efficiency is key. You can't just rest on your laurels, even with, successful product lineup.
Makes you wonder, is all this laser focus on cost cutting, is that going to stifle innovation, or is it going to force them to get even more creative?
I mean, I think it's a delicate balance, right?
Right.
On one hand, you do need to trim the fat.
Yeah.
You got to become more efficient, but you can't stifle the innovation that's going to keep you ahead of the game.
Right.
And I think Ford's trying to walk that tightrope right now.
Well, speaking of tightropes, let's talk about the elephant in the room here, EVs.
Okay.
Market's getting crowded. The pressure's on. Even Farley himself said that the economics of big, fully electric SUVs just aren't quite there yet for everyday drivers.
You're not wrong. I mean, the battery tech needed for those big SUVs is expensive.
Yeah. Big battery means a big price tag, and that's just a barrier for a lot of buyers.
So how is Ford going to play this? Are they going to go all in on EVs? Are they hedging their bets? What's the strategy here?
Well, it seems like they're taking a multi-pronged approach.
Okay.
For now, they're focusing on, smaller, more affordable EVs, particularly in the truck and SUV segments.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Smaller vehicle, smaller battery, smaller price tag that opens up the EV market to a wider range of buyers.
Exactly. And then for those folks who just aren't ready to go fully electric yet, especially if they need a bigger vehicle,
Right.
they're doubling down on hybrids, plug-in hybrids, and something they're calling extended range electric vehicles, or EREVs.
ER, what? Now, Break that down for me, and for anyone listening who might not be familiar with all the EV jargon.
So imagine, kind of the best of both worlds.
Okay.
An ERA is mostly electric, so you get that smooth, quiet ride.
Mm.
But it also has this little gas engine that acts as a generator to extend the range.
So no range anxiety for those long road trips. Yeah, exactly. You're not going to be stranded if you can't find a charging station out in the middle of nowhere.
Pretty clever.
It is. It's kind of like they're saying, look, fully electric where it makes sense.
Yeah.
But for those who need more flexibility, we have these hybrid and EREV options as well.
So they're covering all their bases. It's very interesting, but even with all this fancy tech and all this cost cutting, there's another factor that Ford can't ignore, and that's the global landscape, right? What did Farley have to say about that, especially with the rise of all these Chinese automakers?
Yeah, he acknowledges their efficiency.
Yeah.
And their growing supply chains. He even admitted to being pretty impressed with the Xiaomi SU7. It's an electric SUV. Kind of surprising to hear a Ford CEO praising a competitor like that, right?
Yeah, a little bit. But he didn't just sing their praises, did he?
No, he also brought up some concerns, things like potential unfair subsidies for Chinese companies and the need for, policies that protect data privacy and national security, especially as vehicles become, more and more connected.
Yeah, so it's not just about building great cars anymore. It's a geopolitical game, too.
Absolutely. And it highlights just how complex the challenges facing Ford really are. They have to stay competitive globally while navigating this changing technological landscape and advocating for policies that benefit, American businesses and workers.
Wow, that's a lot to juggle. But I'm curious to hear more about these EREs and how they fit into Ford's overall strategy. And what about their software and services? Are they just playing catch up, or are they pushing boundaries? Let's take a closer look after a quick break.
Yeah, these ERVs are an interesting concept, aren't they?
Yeah.
They could be a real game changer, especially for those drivers who, they love that idea of an electric car, but aren't quite ready to, give up the gas tank entirely.
Yeah, I think it really addresses that range anxiety thing that a lot of people have head on.
For sure. And let's be honest, a lot of folks, especially here in the U.S.,
Yeah.
they aren't ready to part with their, their big trucks and their SUVs.
Right.
But those are the toughest vehicles to electrify, without
Yeah.
bringing a massive, expensive battery in them.
Right. And those big batteries, they add weight, they add cost, and that can affect things like, towing capacity and just how the vehicle handles overall.
Absolutely.
So EREVs could be a way to kind of bridge that gap. You get those benefits of electric, driving the smooth ride, the quietness.
Yeah.
But you also have that backup gas engine there just for peace of mind.
That's right. So you're not,
in case you need it.
stranded if you can't find a charging station on that cross-country road trip.
Exactly. And let's not forget, it could be a more affordable stepping stone too,
Yeah.
You can kind of dip your toes into the electric world without, taking a huge financial plunge.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's really all about, giving people options,
Right.
meeting them where they're at, with the technology that fits their lifestyle and their budget.
Some might say, though, that this whole, multi-energy approach is really just Ford hedging their bets, not fully committing to the EV revolution. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, there's always that risk, right, when you're trying to please everyone. But look, the EV landscape is changing so rapidly.
Yeah.
Battery tech is improving, charging infrastructure is expanding. But there's still a lot of hurdles to overcome.
It's like the Wild West out there.
It is.
Nobody knows what's coming next.
Yeah, so maybe this multi-energy strategy, it's less about, hedging their bets and more about just staying flexible,
Right.
being ready to adapt to whatever curveballs the market throws their way.
Agility. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, and look, don't get me wrong. I mean, Ford isn't ignoring fully electric vehicles.
Yeah.
They're still investing heavily in that next generation of EVs, but they're being, I think, more strategic about which segments they target.
It sounds like they learned a thing or two from the Mustang Mach-E,
Yeah.
It's a great car, don't get me wrong, but they've realized that those big high-end electric SUVs are a tough sell right now.
Yeah, the price point is just too high for most buyers.
Makes sense. And that brings us back to this whole importance of cost cutting, right? If Ford wants to stay competitive in this EV market, especially with those Chinese automakers, breathing down their neck, they need to find ways to be more efficient.
For sure.
And they're talking about, a multi-billion-dollar cost-cutting opportunity here. And it's not just about cutting corners, is it?
No, it's about like a complete overhaul.
Yeah.
They're looking at, every single aspect of their business engineering design, manufacturing, the whole supply chain,
Wow.
aiming for like a complete cultural shift within the company, holding everyone accountable for making real improvements.
It seems to be working, though. They've already, pocketed that 500 million in savings, but
Yeah.
not stopping there.
No, that's just the tip of the iceberg. It's
Yeah,
it's a long road ahead.
it is.
But the real question is, can they achieve those, those really ambitious cost-cutting goals
Yeah.
without sacrificing the quality and desirability of their vehicles?
That's the balancing act, isn't it?
It is, because what good is a cheap car if nobody wants to buy it?
Exactly. And they got to do it all while navigating, this increasingly complex global landscape.
Uh-huh.
We talked about Farley's comments about those Chinese automakers. He's impressed, but also a little wary.
It's that classic case of, keep your friends close, but your enemies closer.
Right.
He sees their strengths, but he's also very aware of the potential threats they pose to Ford's dominance, especially with, their aggressive expansion and the potential government support they might be receiving.
It's like a high-stakes chess match, figuring out how to compete globally while also advocating for policies that level the playing field and protect, American jobs and innovation.
It's a tough spot to be in,
It is.
but it's the reality of the auto industry today.
Yeah.
You can't just focus on building great cars anymore.
Right.
You got to be a master strategist, a political advocate, a technological innovator, all at the same time.
It makes you wonder what the future holds for Ford and really for the whole industry,
Right.
Are we all going to be driving electric cars in a few years? Are those gas-guzzling SUVs going to go extinct, or will we see this, this kind of mix for years to come?
Those are the million-dollar questions, aren't they?
They are.
The road ahead is definitely full of unknowns.
Yeah.
But I think one thing's for sure, it's going to be an interesting ride.
Yeah.
And I think Ford is pretty well positioned to navigate the twists and turns. Their multi-energy approach, their focus on software and services, their commitment to cost cutting, and their awareness of that, that global landscape. It all points to a company that's willing to adapt and evolve.
Sounds like they're taking a no regrets approach, exploring every avenue, hedging their bets, and preparing for whatever the future throws at them.
Yeah.
And speaking of the future, Farley left us with a pretty thought-provoking question. I think it's worth pondering as we kind of wrap up this part of our conversation. What do you make of his comment about Ford's, multi-energy approach? What does that say about the future of driving? Will one technology dominate, or will we see a mix for years to come? What do you think?
Yeah, it really is a fascinating point. On the one hand, you got those EV enthusiasts who are absolutely convinced that electric is the only way forward.
Right.
And then you have folks on the other end of the spectrum who are perfectly happy with their, gas-powered vehicles.
Yeah.
And they don't see the need to switch anytime soon.
Right. Right.
And then somewhere in the middle, you have, the people who are intrigued by EVs, but they have some concerns about range charging infrastructure cost,
Yeah, it's like we're at a crossroads right now.
We are.
Will one technology ultimately win out?
Right.
Or will we see, this mix of powertrain options for years to come, each one kind of catering to different needs and preferences?
Right.
I don't know if anyone has a crystal ball that can tell us for sure. Yeah, it's tough to say, but I think, Ford's multi-energy approach is a pretty good indicator of where things might be headed, at least in the near term, They're not putting all their eggs in one basket. They're offering a range of choices to appeal to a wider range of customers.
It's a smart strategy. By offering hybrids, plug-in hybrids, ERAVs, fully electric vehicles, it gives them flexibility.
Right.
They could adapt to changes in the market, whether it's fluctuating fuel prices, advancements in battery technology, or just shifts in consumer demand.
Yeah, it's like they're hedging their bets, but in a way that makes sense.
Right.
They're not just throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks,
Exactly.
Or they're carefully evaluating each option and tailoring their offerings to specific segments of the market.
Yeah.
And that actually makes me think about something else that Farley said.
Okay.
His admiration for that Xiaomi electric SUV.
Yeah, his comment about that Xiaomi SU7 I thought was pretty telling.
It was.
It shows that he's not just focused on, the traditional competition. He's keeping a close eye on these new players, especially those coming out of China.
Yeah.
who are bringing fresh ideas and really innovative technology to the table.
It's a good reminder that the auto industry is a global game now, you know?
Absolutely.
Ford can't afford to just rest on their laurels. They need to be constantly pushing the boundaries, innovating and adapting to stay ahead of the curve.
Yeah,
And that's where I think their investments in software and services come in.
exactly. They're recognizing that, the car is no longer just a mode of transportation.
Right.
It's becoming like this connected hub, an extension of our digital lives.
It is.
And that opens up a whole new world of possibilities for Ford, not just in terms of, revenue, but also in terms of enhancing the customer experience.
Yeah, it's about creating that seamless ecosystem, that integrates with our phones, our homes, our daily routines.
For sure.
You think about things like, over-the-air software updates, personalized driving profiles, predictive maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
These are the kinds of things that can really differentiate Ford from the competition and build customer loyalty.
Absolutely. And don't forget about, the potential of autonomous driving, too.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I mean, fully self-driving cars may still be a few years off.
Right.
But Ford is making strides in developing these advanced driver assistance systems that can make driving safer and more convenient.
Features like, adaptive cruise control, lane keeping, assist, automatic emergency braking. I mean, those are already becoming commonplace, and they're really paving the way for even more sophisticated, autonomous capabilities in the future.
It's an exciting time to be following the auto industry.
It is.
There's just so much innovation happening, so much disruption, and so much potential for really transformative change.
Absolutely. And it's clear that Ford is right in the thick of it, embracing these challenges and pushing the boundaries of what's possible. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Ford's future, it seems like, they're facing a lot of tough questions, but they're also equipped with a lot of tools and strategies to navigate these uncertain times. Their multi-energy approach gives them flexibility.
Right.
Their cost-cutting measures are sharpening their competitive edge.
Mm-hmm.
Their software and services are enhancing the customer experience.
Yeah.
And their global awareness is keeping them ahead of the curve. What are your final thoughts?
I think Ford is in a really strong position.
Right.
They're acknowledging the challenges, they're adapting to the changing landscape, and they're not afraid to make bold moves.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a company with a rich history, but also a clear vision for the future. And I, for one, am excited to see what they do next.
Me too. Me too. What about you? What stood out to you the most?
For me, I think it's that balancing act.
Mm-hmm.
Balancing their legacy as a truck manufacturer with their ambitions in the EV space.
Right.
Balancing cost-cutting with innovation.
Yeah.
Balancing global competition with a commitment to American manufacturing.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
It's a delicate dance, but it seems like they're finding their rhythm.
They are. They are well said. Well, it's a dance that we'll all be watching closely in the years to come.
We will.
And who knows, maybe we'll all be joining in on that dance floor sooner than we think.
Maybe so.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Ford's future. We hope you found it insightful.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
And we encourage you to continue exploring these topics and sharing your own thoughts and predictions. The future of driving is an open road, and it's up to all of us to shape the journey. Until next time.